Well, for this video, we're going to have a bit of fun. We're going to assume that the climate alarmists are right and that CO2 is the sole reason since 1850, since after the Industrial Revolution there, when we put CO2 in the atmosphere, mankind, and we're responsible for it all. For some reason, they assume at this point, by the way, that all natural variation in climate ceased, which makes them actually the climate deniers, really, because they're denying natural climate variation. Never mind, but let's look now. Let's go back and look. If they'd had their way, mankind hadn't come along and changed the world for the great benefit of the world, by the way, with the Industrial Revolution. If we hadn't done that, what could we expect from the weather, given that there's no natural variation? Well, I'll just take one period now from this website, and that period is 1600 to 1650. It's not a particularly bad period. I can take almost any period in history. And I'll just look at the UK, and the same applies worldwide, because the facts are that extreme weather was far worse in the past, before the Industrial Revolution, than it is now. And there's good scientific reasons for that. So let's go back and imagine us having this weather today. Well, this is the page for that period from that website. And it lists more or less each year, as we go through those years, the weather reporting. So what I'm going to do now is just go through a few of them, not all of them, just a few of them, just to give you an idea of how variable the weather was before mankind came along and shoved the CO2 into the atmosphere. 1601-02, severe winter in Scotland, drought in the autumn and winter in London and the south. 1607, flood, 2,000 died in the Severn Estuary, Somerset and Rent levels suffering devastating effects. Flooding in East Anglia as well, dry hot summer in London south. 1607-1608, the Great Winter, trees died, ships were stranded in ice several miles out in the North Sea. The North Sea froze, Thames iced over, Firth of Forth frozen over, River Exe near Exeter froze. 1609-1610, the Thames froze, you could drive heavy carriages over it. And then again in 1610, hot dry summer across the south, blizzards and snowstorms unparalleled in recent history. 1611, a year later, floods and great rains. 1612, drought until August. 1614-1615, widespread drought, then great snowfalls, and the misery continued. So you see, that was the weather that we obviously missed. Even if you go back further, the Great Wind of 1362, there's always been extreme weather, but it was truly worse in the past. In the 1700s, the UK suffered its worst drought ever. There's not been exceeded anything like it since. So the idea that people want us to return to that, and we are responsible for changing that. The truth is, today we have less extreme weather than in the past. And everything about this whole CO2 thing is a total fabrication. But that doesn't stop. Only just now, the UK government having announced an extra tax on energy. Amongst them is the hydrogen tax. So you're all going to be charged an extra $3 billion in tax now, to use energy, because they've got to subsidise the hydrogen, which costs 3 times more energy to make than you get out of it. So you put 3 kilowatt hours in and you get 1 kilowatt hour out. That's a great scheme. And in these high energy cost times, you are being charged all on this basis of the CO2 being a bad thing. Frankly, if you fall for this CO2 con now, you might as well believe that pigs can fly. As always, I'll answer all the comments in the comments below and welcome any questions.